What's going on, guys? It's Mike. Welcome back. We're going to do a little bit of a ramble today, just an informal ramble about strategy. Now, I'm doing a script. I've been working on a script for a few weeks on strategy. I want to do a strategy video, and I'll probably be doing more over time. But there's this kind of one thing in the background that just haunts me as I go through this script, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to focus the script on this issue, but I think the issue is important enough that I ought to do something. And so I thought, you know what, let me jump in front of the camera, do more of an informal conversation, if you will. I had a guy drag me once. I said, let's have a conversation, whatever. I get it. This is a monologue. I'm talking to a camera. We're not having a discussion, but you can down in the comments below have a conversation with me. I read the comments, leave a comment, like and subscribe and all this stuff. But I want to just talk about this a little bit, this thing that bothers me about strategy. So here's the thing. You go across the business landscape, as I do, as a consultant and as a former agency owner, and you deal with a lot of different companies, private companies, big corporations, everything in between, mom and pop, all that jazz. Everybody talks strategy. In the meetings, people are like, well, from a strategic perspective, what do you think about this? And what's our strategy on that? And we've got a strategic objective, and strategy is used all over the place. You see strategy in people's titles. Has become a lot more popular, data strategists, content strategists, these kind of functional strategist roles. And you see people with strategic planning, and you get, consultants like me that have strategist on their card. So you see this title of strategist and strategy becoming a lot more ubiquitous. You get companies, lots of companies, and you've seen this, you probably participate in it, where they engage in strategic planning every year. Every year they set aside time, the leadership and some of the management get together, and they go through a strategic planning process. But I'm telling you that they're not doing strategy, that these people in these companies believe that they're engaging in strategy. They are not. And this is not me being some kind of Reddit neckbeard who's being precious. Actually, this isn't about me being precious about process. It's not me being, kind of sniffy about, well, there's only one right way to do it. They're not quite getting it right, and so I refuse to call that strategy. There is a misconception, and it's dramatic. There's a fundamental misconception of what strategy is from my perspective. So what am I talking about? Well, here's the thing. When you see most companies engage in strategy, it's usually one of two things. So a lot of companies, and we won't spend time on this, but they tend to think of strategy as objectives or goals. Our strategy is to, raise $10 million, say for a not-for-profit. That's not a strategy. That's just a goal or an objective. That's not a strategy. Like it might be of strategic value to raise money, but you need a strategy on how you're going to get there. I mean, that's really what that boils down to. The other way, and the one that kind of sticks in my craw a little bit more, and I sound like this is personal, like it really bothers me. It doesn't. It's a concern, is the strategic planning process. Companies religiously go through strategic planning, and they think that that's doing strategy. And here's what strategic planning is. Typically, it is a plan that a business is developing to get from point A to point B. What do I mean by that? A company's making $20 million a year in revenue, and they sit down come September, whenever their strategic planning process kicks off. Sometimes it's December, right before the end of the year. And they go, hey, look, we did 20 million this year. We did pretty good. I'd like us to get to 25 million. That's a 20% increase, ladies and gentlemen. So let's start planning on how we're going to get there. It's going from point A to point B. Point A is 20 million. 25 million is point B. That's a 20% increase in growth. How are we going to do it? And then they get right into developing budgets and talking about plans to hire the right people. Maybe we need new equipment for this, and we're going to reorganize the warehouse. And there are all these kind of metrics and KPIs and tactical plans going forward. A lot of this is just control systems that the team is now going to impose upon the business going forward for the next year so that they can go from 20 to 25 million in revenue. Control systems aren't bad necessarily, but you have to understand that what transpires at these types of events is not strategy. These are inward and backward looking discussions. I say backwards looking because they're looking back at the history of the company and they're saying, what did we do last year? What did we do the last 3 to 5 years? What's reasonable based on the past that we can expect for the future? They're kind of forecasting, if you will. And if you've been involved in any of these meetings or if you've been involved in any type of sales, you know that this is how it works. They don't typically look out into the market to figure this out. You essentially look at your own history and you say, what's reasonable? So you put a goal out there. And I say it's inward looking because it's really focused on the business. It kind of treats the business as if it operates in this static environment, in this thing around it that never changes. So the business changes, but everything around it stays the same. Now, I know that people don't really believe that, but they almost make that assumption. It's like, look, we can't control the outside world, so let's not get hung up on that. Let's focus on what we can control. And see, that is the issue. And I said, and I'll talk about what strategy is in a second compared to this, but the reason that this is so popular, business is tough. Business operates in a very hostile environment. It is filled with competitors and regulators, government. There's all kinds of economic drama happening. You've got international global supply chain issues. You've got things like inflation and consumer being fickle and lack of confidence. It's just all this stuff. And business is tough. It's tough. And you can't control all that out there. And business people, a lot of them are oriented towards minimizing and eliminating risk. They're trying to take the risk out of their business is risky. And so they're saying, how can we eliminate the risk? And so what a lot of business people do is they focus on the operational side of the business. They focus on what are the things that we can control. Look, if I can put it in a spreadsheet and I can get my arms around it and I can kind of manage it, I feel better about it. It just makes me feel good. And so that's what people gravitate towards. They don't like the unknown. They don't like the rough and wild, the red and tooth and claw market out there. They just kind of say, well, there's nothing we can do about that. We can't control decisions by the government. We can't control our competitors. All we can control is us. What pricing are we going to have? What production? What pipeline? And how can we squeeze out another 15% growth or 20% in my earlier example? So business people, leaders on down to management, on down to foot soldiers, often go right to the thing that they can control because that's where we as human beings, psychological peeps, this isn't some flaw in business people. This is a human thing. They go to the thing they can control, which is their own business. And so they tend to look inwards at the thing they can control, and they look back at history that is quantifiable. They look at the past. Hey, we did 15 million in sales in 2020. Then we did 17.5 million in 2021. Then we did 22 million in forward. And you see how that works. That gives a sense of security. But all you're really doing by looking inwards and backwards and then planning on how you're going to go from point A to point B is imposing control systems, and you're ignoring the world around you. Strategy, on the other hand, is a much more dynamic, creative, and I will say angst-creating exercise. It's an activity that embraces the unknown, and it relies on insights and divergent thinking and connecting dots that aren't obvious to anybody else, and synthesizing and engaging in competition in a way that's meaningful. I will get into this in my video, the script I'm working on. But what is it? Roger Miller? Oh, sorry, Roger Martin. My bad. He was the dean of the Rotman School of Business, which University of Toronto, and very highly regarded strategist and innovative thinker, et cetera, business thinker. I like his approach. His definition of strategy, and this is just from memory, it's not reading off a script, is essentially that you're making a set of integrative choices on where you're going to play, meaning what playing field are you going to play on, and what product you're choosing, what you're going to offer in a way that allows you to win. And that's my paraphrase. Forgive me, Roger, if I didn't quite get that right. It'll be better in the script I'm working on in the next video. But essentially what he's saying is you're looking out at the competitive landscape and he doesn't say this, but you're essentially assessing everything out there and you are decomposing it. You're looking at your competitors, you're decomposing all the details into its constituent parts. You're looking at the economy, you're looking at the regulatory environment, you're looking at your prospects in your market, the consumers and so on. You're decomposing all these things into their constituent parts and you're analyzing all these things. And then you're looking through divergent thinking for ways that you can synthesize these things together. You're also looking at yourself, by the way. You're part of that mix. You're looking for ways to synthesize together in a way that creates or places you on the playing field in a way that nobody else is placed, and to offer something that nobody else is offering. And that way you're choosing to put yourself in a position to win. It's a little less defined. It's a little less controllable. It's a little more risky. And so strategy for a lot of people, true strategy making, this kind of creative exercise of figuring out where you can be in your market, on what playing field and what you're going to offer, and in what ways that are creative and dynamic and set you apart, differentiate enough that others can't beat you, that can be scary. At the same time, it can be extremely rewarding. And this is why this kind of sticks in my craw a little bit. There's nothing wrong with trying to operationalize your business. But if really you're focused on strategic planning and you're pretending that the world out there is static, that it doesn't really change, and you're focused only on the things that you can control, well, someone is going to change your world on you. You might be in a market that's pretty stable, and most of your competitors are not involved in true strategy making. Maybe most of them are going through the classic strategic planning process, and in the end, everything's fine. You keep eking out your 5 to 20% growth every year, and everything's hunky-dory. But all it takes is one competitor to figure out that they can upset the market. It just takes one to do that strategic thinking, that assessment, that synthesis work, that divergent thinking, to connect dots, to see an aha, to have kind of an aha moment and go, you know what? We see an opportunity. It doesn't seem like anybody notices this. We have an opportunity. We actually have the organization with a couple tweaks that could deliver on this opportunity in an amazing way. And when that happens, whole industries change. Jeff Bezos is a great example of this. He was a strategic thinker. I'm assuming he still is. But when he started Amazon, my understanding is, don't quote me because I don't hang out with the guy, so I don't know for sure. But my understanding is that Jeff got into books knowing that he wanted to be an online retailer across the board. He just knew that books, which is, for those of you that don't know because you're too young, Amazon started as a bookseller. I think everybody knows that. He started with books because that was an easy one for him to get at. It was a product that he could ship, he could manage, it was static enough, et cetera, and then he grew from that. I mean, I was doing some note-taking last night, and I'm writing a note, and I made a mistake. You guys probably see my Zettelkasten video, so I'm working on the Zettelkasten, taking some notes, and I made a mistake, and I was ripping the card up to start again, and I thought, you know what, I need some whiteout. That's a brand, it's Bic owns it, but I need some correction fluid, if you will. Because if I have a little bit, I can just dab it there and keep writing as opposed to starting all over again. You know, you rewrite these cards, it's a waste of time and energy. I didn't make a note to go to Staples or Office Max or something tomorrow. I went right online in the moment and bought it on Amazon. I'm going to buy everything on Amazon except for, food. Even some food products, some stable stuff, you get it on Amazon. He had a strategy. And by doing that, he put thousands, I would imagine, of mom and pop retailers out of business. He put regional retailers out of business. They're struggling, if they're still alive, to find a way forward. And you've got your large retailers like Walmart still struggling to try to figure out the online business. They have not cracked that code. Walmart, healthy business. But golly, I mean, Amazon dominates that market. They put a bunch of competitors out of business. They squeeze the margins on some of the survivors. And then even the big boys out there that you would think could compete punch for punch struggle to even catch up to Amazon and to do half as well as them. So my point there being that if you are allowing yourself the luxury of solely doing strategic planning, imposing control systems that help you get from point A to B, you're leaving yourself exposed. There's actually a risk involved in that. You should go through the true strategy making process. That's not to say that you've got to implement some risky strategy, but even going through that process of research, of analysis of your own business, of the market out there, decomposition, and then recomposing things in ways that are creative could be very profitable for your business. If at the least it gives you perspective on the world that you're operating in and informs your decisions more so than if you're pretending, kind of operating like, well, we can't control the world out there, so why bother? So that's my little rant. I hope that you found this interesting. Let me know in the comments. I mean, have you bumped into the same thing? Maybe you're one of these folks that love strategic planning. Push back. If you say, Mike, you're wrong, that's actual strategy, and here's why. I'd love to have that conversation with you in the comments. Regardless, let me know what you think. Guys, thanks so much for sticking around. I love each and every one of you. Hope the best for you, and I will catch you all in the next video. Cheers.